Have you ever noticed that the more you defend yourself, the more your words get twisted? That fighting for truth, justice, or respect often makes you look desperate, while those who deceive and manipulate walk away unscathed. But what if the wisest move isn't to fight back, but to step back? To trust that life has a way of balancing itself. Like a flame that dies without oxygen, some battles end the moment you refuse to feed them. Or think of a still pond. Disturbed water only clears when left untouched. Karma is not about revenge, it's about consequences. Every lie, every betrayal, every act of harm carries its own weight, and eventually that weight returns to its owner. While they waste their energy provoking, you have a choice. Engage and be dragged down, or stay silent and let time reveal the truth. So when should you step aside and let karma do what words cannot? Stay with me, because the last one may change the way you see everything. 1. When someone lies about you. Few things are as infuriating as hearing a lie spread about you. The instinct to defend yourself, to set the record straight, is overwhelming. You want to make sure everyone knows the truth. But here's the paradox. The harder you fight a lie, the more power you give it. Lies thrive on reaction. The more you defend yourself, the more people start to wonder if there's something to defend in the first place. The more you argue, the more tangled you become in the very web the liar has spun for you. Some people don't care about truth. They care about control. They spread falsehoods not to seek justice, but to provoke you, to pull you into a battle where every move you make becomes another piece of their game. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your greatest ally. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That is the standard you must hold yourself to, not the shifting judgments of those who are quick to believe lies. Others may deceive, but their deception does not define you. Your response does. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him Daniel, who worked in a competitive office environment. One day, he found out that a co-worker had spread a damaging rumor about him, suggesting he was dishonest in his work. At first, anger boiled inside him. He wanted to call a meeting, explain to everyone why it was false, prove his integrity. But then he took a step back. He remembered something he had read. Time is the friend of truth. So he said nothing. He continued to do his work with excellence, treated everyone with the same respect, and let his actions speak. At first, the rumor spread. Some people whispered. A few colleagues distanced themselves. But Daniel remained unmoved. Weeks later, the truth surfaced. The person who had spread the lies had a history of deception. Their credibility crumbled. And Daniel? He had never lowered himself to the mud, so he emerged untouched, his dignity intact. The lesson? Lies may spread quickly, but they burn out just as fast when you don't fuel them with your energy. Truth, on the other hand, is timeless. So what should you do when someone lies about you? First, trust in the long game. You don't need to chase down every falsehood. Truth has a way of surfacing when left undisturbed. Second, focus on your integrity. If you know who you are, the opinions of those who believe lies shouldn't shake you. And finally, let karma do its job. People who build their reputation on deception will eventually collapse under the weight of their own falsehoods. Your silence is not weakness. It is control. It is a statement that you refuse to be dragged into a battle that does not deserve your energy. And when the truth finally comes out, you'll still have something far more valuable than the approval of the crowd: your dignity. 2. When someone betrays your trust. Betrayal cuts deep. Whether it's a friend who turns their back on you, a partner who breaks their promises, or someone you believed in who lets you down, there are few pains as sharp as realizing that someone you trusted was never who you thought they were. Your first instinct? Confrontation. You want answers. You want them to see the damage they've caused, to admit their wrongdoing, to feel the weight of their actions. But here's the hard truth. Words won't change a betrayer's nature. If someone was willing to betray you once, chances are they've already justified it in their own mind. They've convinced themselves that what they did was necessary, excusable, or worse, your fault. No amount of reasoning will change that. If you try to explain, they'll twist your words. If you try to make them feel guilty, they'll find a way to paint themselves as the victim. And if you demand closure, you're giving them exactly what they want: your attention, your energy, your emotion. That's why walking away in silence is the loudest response. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your greatest ally. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." In other words, betrayal is painful, but it is also a teacher. It forces you to grow, to strengthen your boundaries, and to see people for who they truly are. The pain you feel isn't just suffering. It's a lesson in self-respect, in detachment, and in letting go of those who were never meant to stay. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him David, who had a best friend for over a decade. They had been through everything together, shared their secrets, supported each other's dreams. But one day, David discovered that this friend had been speaking behind his back, revealing private conversations, even sabotaging opportunities that could have helped him move forward. The betrayal stung. His first reaction was anger. He wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, to make him see how deeply he had broken the trust between them. But then, David made a different choice. He didn't argue. He didn't seek revenge. He simply walked away. No explanations, no dramatic goodbye, no second chances. At first, his friend didn't understand. He expected a fight. He expected David to lash out, to try and fix the friendship, to seek closure. But instead, all he got was silence. And that silence, it spoke louder than any words ever could. Because while anger can be dismissed, silence lingers. It forces a betrayer to sit with their own actions, to face the emptiness they created. And in time, David's decision became clear. By refusing to engage, he had freed himself from the burden of someone who was never worthy of his trust. So how do you handle betrayal? First, accept that some people will never be who you thought they were. The pain of betrayal comes from expectation. Let it go. Second, do not waste your breath explaining their wrongdoing to them. They already know, even if they won't admit it. And finally, walk away with dignity. Your silence isn't weakness, it's strength. At the end of the day, true power lies in detachment. A betrayer thrives on reaction, on guilt, on second chances. Don't give them that. Let your silence remind them of one simple truth. You were never the one who lost. They were the one who should have never betrayed you in the first place. 3. When someone insults you. At some point, we all face insults. A snide remark, a backhanded compliment, or an outright attack. Whatever form they take, insults serve one purpose: to provoke you. They are designed to pull you into a game where your reaction gives the insulter exactly what they crave: control over your emotions. And that's the trap. The moment you react, whether by arguing back, defending yourself, or even showing anger, you've already lost, because now you're playing by their rules. Here's the hard truth. Responding to insults only gives them power. When someone insults you, they're fishing for a reaction. They want to see you upset. They want the satisfaction of knowing they got under your skin. But when you refuse to engage, when you remain calm, unshaken, and indifferent, that is when you truly win. Because nothing frustrates an insulter more than being ignored. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your greatest weapon. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Think about that. The moment you lower yourself to their level, you've already lost. If they are being petty, cruel, or disrespectful, why give them the satisfaction of seeing you stoop to their game? Instead, take the higher path, one of silence, self-control, and dignity. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him Jonathan, who had recently earned a well-deserved promotion at work. At a company event, one of his colleagues, clearly jealous, decided to humiliate him in front of others. With a smirk, he said, "Wow, I guess they're just handing out promotions to anyone these days." The room went silent. Everyone was waiting for Jonathan to fire back, to defend himself, to put the guy in his place. But instead he simply smiled, made eye contact and said, "Nothing. Just silence. No anger, no defensiveness, no need to justify himself. And you know what happened?" The insulter suddenly looked uncomfortable. He had expected an argument, a reaction, something he could latch onto. But instead, he was left standing there, his bitterness exposed, while Jonathan walked away with his power intact. That's the strength of silence. When you refuse to react, you force the other person to sit with their own insecurity, their own negativity. You do not need to prove your worth to those who try to tear you down. Your composure speaks louder than any words ever could. So how do you handle insults? First, recognize that insults say more about the person delivering them than about you. People who insult others are often projecting their own insecurities. Second, understand that your silence is your strength. By not reacting, you show that their words hold no weight in your world. And finally, carry yourself with confidence. When you respond with calm indifference, the insulter is left powerless. At the end of the day, you can't control what others say, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Because silence, that's the ultimate proof that their words don't define you. You do. 4. When they play the victim. Few things are as frustrating as dealing with someone who constantly plays the victim. You know the type. Their version of the story is always twisted, their own actions conveniently left out, and somehow they always end up looking like the one who was wronged. It doesn't matter what really happened. What matters to them is how they can gain sympathy, shift blame, and make others see you as the problem. And here's the trap. The more you try to defend yourself, the more you look like the villain. Some people don't seek resolution. They seek attention. They don't care about honesty. They don't care about fairness. Their goal isn't to fix the situation. It's to control the narrative. And if you engage, if you argue, explain, or try to prove your innocence, you're walking straight into their trap. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your guide. Epictetus once said, "To complain is always non-productive and never appropriate." And that applies perfectly here. When someone plays the victim, they are not looking for solutions, they are looking for an audience. So don't give them one. Let karma expose their manipulation, because the truth, it always comes out. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in time, people start seeing patterns. They'll notice how this person is always the victim in every situation, and that's when the act falls apart. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him James, who worked in a close-knit office. One of his colleagues, Brian, had a habit of twisting every situation to make himself look like the innocent party. Whenever he was confronted for missing deadlines, for taking credit for others' work, or for causing problems, he had the same reaction. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of that. I would never do something like that." And to make it even more convincing, he would make sure to complain loudly to the right people, acting hurt, making James seem like the aggressor. At first, James did what most people would do. He defended himself. He explained the facts, showed proof, and tried to have a logical conversation. But the more he tried, the worse it got. Brian thrived on the drama. Every response James gave was twisted into more proof that he was being attacked. So James did something different. He stopped explaining. No more defending, no more reacting. He simply focused on his work and let time reveal the truth. And sure enough, it did. Over time, others in the office started noticing the same patterns. Brian played the victim one too many times, and people stopped believing him. The same manipulation tactics that once worked became obvious. His credibility crumbled, not because James fought back, but because he didn't. The truth had no need for defense. Time did the work for him. So how do you handle someone who plays the victim? First, don't argue. The more you try to prove yourself, the more you feed their story. Second, stay calm and detached. Let their own behavior expose them. And finally, trust karma. People who constantly manipulate and twist the truth will always reveal themselves in time. At the end of the day, silence is your power. Let them talk. Let them spin their version. Let them play their game. Because in the end, the truth doesn't need your defense. Time will do that for you. 5. When they ignore your worth. Few things cut deeper than realizing you are being undervalued. Whether in relationships, friendships, or even at work, there comes a moment when you see the truth. No matter how much effort you give, no matter how consistently you show up, some people will never truly appreciate you. You offer support, kindness, loyalty, but instead of gratitude, you receive indifference. Instead of respect, you are taken for granted. And the natural instinct? To fight for recognition, to prove your value, to make them see what you bring to the table. But here's the hard truth. Begging for recognition lowers your value. The more you chase, the less they respect you. People don't appreciate what's always available. They don't value what they believe they'll never lose. That's why silence is your greatest weapon. When you stop proving, stop chasing, stop trying to convince them of your worth, something shifts. Suddenly, they feel the absence of what they once dismissed. Silence forces them to see what they lost. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your guide. Seneca once said, "Time discovers truth." And that is exactly what happens when you walk away with dignity. The truth reveals itself, not through words, not through arguments, but through absence. The people who truly value you will notice. The ones who don't, they were never meant to stay. Let me share a story. There was a woman, let's call her Emily, who was always the one making an effort in her relationships. She was the friend who checked in, the colleague who supported others, the person who always made time for those she cared about. But one day, she realized something. The effort was one-sided. If she didn't reach out, days, sometimes weeks, would pass without a word. If she didn't initiate plans, nothing happened. Slowly, it dawned on her. She wasn't being valued. She was just being convenient. So Emily made a choice. She didn't announce it. No dramatic exits, no angry confrontations. She simply stopped chasing. She went silent. And you know what happened? The people who truly cared noticed. They reached out, checked in, made an effort. But the ones who had only seen her as an option, they disappeared. And that was her answer. So how do you handle being undervalued? First, stop explaining your worth. Your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to see it. Second, step back and observe. The right people won't need reminders to appreciate you. And finally, let time do the work. When you walk away with silence, you give others the opportunity to realize what they lost. At the end of the day, you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. If someone can't see your worth while you're there, let them experience your absence. Because sometimes the only way people learn to value you is when they no longer have access to you. 6. When they try to provoke you. One of the greatest forms of self-mastery is the ability to remain silent when someone is trying to provoke you. There will always be people who thrive on conflict. They poke, they prod, they throw out little jabs, not because they seek truth or resolution, but because they crave a reaction. And the moment you react, whether in anger, frustration, or defense, you've given them exactly what they wanted: control over your emotions. Here's the hard truth. People who seek conflict aren't looking for resolution. They want to see you flustered, upset, or out of character. They feed off your emotional energy because it gives them a sense of power. But when you refuse to engage, when you remain calm, collected, and indifferent, that is the ultimate power move. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your greatest weapon. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You can't control how others behave. You can't stop people from trying to provoke you, but you can control whether or not you let them disturb your peace. And when you master that, you become untouchable. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him Ryan, who had a co-worker notorious for stirring up drama. In every meeting, every interaction, this co-worker would throw out passive-aggressive comments, hoping to get a rise out of him. At first, Ryan would defend himself, argue back, try to explain his side. But over time, he realized something. No matter what he said, it only fueled the fire. So one day, he tried a different approach. The next time his co-worker made a snide remark, Ryan simply smiled, gave a calm nod, and moved on. No anger, no defensiveness, just quiet confidence. And guess what? The co-worker hated it. He kept trying, throwing out more jabs, but without the reaction he craved, he eventually lost interest. Ryan had won, not by fighting back, but by refusing to play the game. So how do you handle people who try to provoke you? First, recognize their game. If someone consistently tries to get under your skin, it's not an accident, it's a pattern. Second, stay calm and detached. Your silence and indifference will frustrate them far more than any argument ever could. And finally, remember that true strength isn't in reacting, it's in controlling your own mind. At the end of the day, the strongest person in the room isn't the one who yells the loudest. It's the one who refuses to be controlled by anyone else's negativity. When you ignore those who seek to provoke you, you deny them the satisfaction they crave. And that, right there, is real power. 7. When they regret losing you. One of life's greatest lessons is knowing when to walk away and letting someone feel the weight of their own choices. When a person mistreats you, takes you for granted, or fails to appreciate you, there often comes a moment when they realize what they've lost. But by then, it's already too late. Here's the truth. If someone truly valued you, they wouldn't have put themselves in a position to lose you in the first place. People don't always recognize your worth when you're there, when you're available, when your presence is constant. But the moment you're gone, the silence becomes deafening. That's when regret sinks in. That's when they replay every mistake, every moment they could have done better. And that is why silence is the best response. You don't need to argue, explain, or remind them of what they lost. Let them sit with the consequences. Let them feel the absence of what they once had, but failed to cherish. Because when you truly walk away, with no words, no second chances, no maybe later energy, your absence does all the talking. This is where Stoic wisdom guides you. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True strength isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. It's about having the discipline to walk away from those who didn't value you and the wisdom to never look back. Because real power isn't in chasing, it's in knowing when to stop giving your energy to people who never deserved it. Let me share a story. There was a man, let's call him Alex, who was in a long-term relationship where he constantly felt unappreciated. He gave everything, his time, his loyalty, his love. But his partner, she assumed he would always be there. She took his presence for granted, until one day he wasn't. Alex didn't argue, he didn't beg, he didn't make dramatic threats. He simply walked away, no explanations, no parting words. At first, she thought he was bluffing, but as weeks turned into months, reality hit her. She reached out, full of apologies and regret. But by then, Alex had already moved on, and that's when she truly felt the loss. So how do you handle someone who regrets losing you? First, don't give them an easy way back. If they only appreciate you after you're gone, they never truly valued you. Second, don't explain your absence. Let them wonder. And finally, remember that real self-respect isn't just knowing when to walk away. It's having the strength to stay gone. At the end of the day, the most powerful lesson you can teach someone is that once you're gone, you're truly gone. No warnings, no second chances, just silence. If someone regrets losing you, let them. Their regret is theirs to carry, not yours to fix. Their lesson is theirs to learn, not your burden to bear. You don't need to remind them of what they lost. Your absence already speaks louder than words ever could. Walk away. Stay silent. Let karma do what words never will. If this message resonated with you, show your support by hitting like and subscribing for more powerful insights on self-mastery and inner strength. And before you go, drop a comment with "Silence wins" if you're choosing self-respect over pointless battles. Remember, true power comes not from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. Stay strong, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the wisdom that makes you unstoppable.